We'll be back in a moment as we continue now with one incredible story with Mac Tonnies after the Martian apocalypse. That's next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie. Mac Tonnies is the author of After the Martian Apocalypse and the Crypto-Terrestrial. Since 2003, he's maintained Posthuman Blues, a blog devoted to Fortean phenomena, ufology, technology. Mac has spoken in the United States and Canada, hosted an episode of Vision TV's Supernatural Investigator, and appeared in the award-winning UFO documentary Best Evidence, Top 10 UFO Sightings. Here he is on Coast to Coast AM. Mac, how are you?
I am doing quite well.
Good to have you with us today. Tell me about you. How'd you get involved and interested in UFOs? Must have been since you were a kid. It happens to all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it seems like with a lot of people it goes back to a very young age, and no different with me. I can't trace it to any particular instance in my life, any particular stimulus, but yeah, it's just been there. It's just this kind of ambient interest as long as I can remember.
You have come across some incredible stories, I'm sure, and as you continue to investigate, is there one in particular that has just driven you wild?
Driven me wild? A case that I return to again and again when I write, speculative essays on the UFO occupant phenomenon is the Antonio Villas-Boas case from Brazil. And there have been, several different interpretations about what might have happened, whether it was a hoax, et cetera. But I'm tantalized by that case. It's got some very intriguing overtones to it that continue to, I think they're compelling.
Tell me a little bit more about that case, man.
It's a case in Brazil. A farmer sighted an object on, I believe, 3 previous occasions during the previous week. One night when he was out plowing the field, the object landed. He was accosted by 3 individuals, I believe, and taken aboard the landed object. And ultimately had some sort of sexual liaison with this strange humanoid female inside. And the case got my attention, I suppose, because I found it rather strange that there'd be any compatibility between species if we were dealing with extraterrestrials. The case doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. The case was originally censored because it was pretty sensationalistic, and not even the UFO community took it seriously. It was archived by by APRO, Jim and Coral Lorenzen at the time, and ultimately appeared in their book UFO Occupants, kind of a classic read. And but once the Hill abduction became big news, Betty and Barney Hill's abduction by apparent extraterrestrials, the Villas-Boas case kind of cropped up, became acceptable, and it was acceptable to think that we might be dealing with actual occupants instead of just metallic vehicles or whatever. So it's a neat case with neat historical overtones, and I suppose one of the reasons I like it from an academic perspective is because it wasn't out there contaminating the meme pool, like the Hill case has been alleged to have done. It was just kind of quietly filed away, and people just kind of cleared their throats and turned away from because of the kind of embarrassing implications. But look back on from now. And looking at it in the context of this very complex phenomenon, it appears to make a certain degree of sense. And I think perhaps it sheds some light on what might be going on.
Mac, we get so many different theories about the origin of ETs and extraterrestrials, whatever they may be. We hear that they could be coming from other planetary systems, from other dimensions, from within this planet. That their government, military, it's a hoax. And even some people have some religious overtones to this, claiming that they might be fallen angels or demons, for example. What do you prescribe to?
Well, I think it's a combination of almost all those things overall. As far as government vehicles being tested, most UFOs are, I believe, probably IFOs, but I think there does remain a core phenomenon that warrants very rigorous interest. And those are the ones that I'm interested in, and those are the ones that I think most UFO researchers are interested in. And if we're dealing with a non-human intelligence, and I think that's the most compelling residue we're left with, then I'm not sure what we're dealing with. However, the extraterrestrial hypothesis has enjoyed quite a bit of popularity since the modern inception of the UFO phenomenon in the late 40s, early 50s. And we've kind of stuck with that. And I guess my complaint would be that we've kind of reveled in the extraterrestrial hypothesis as the best explanation for the truly unidentified saucer sightings. And I think that's not necessarily the best case. I think as the decades have gone on, the universe has become a stranger place, much more pregnant with possibility. For example, just one example, the science of parallel worlds. This is now a credible cosmological subject, whereas just a couple decades ago it really wasn't. But now it's talked about routinely. Instead of talking about a universe, we now talk about a multiverse. So in the same kind of vein, I have to wonder if the extraterrestrial hypothesis is necessarily the best hypothesis for what we're seeing. It could very well be part of the mystery. We could be dealing with myriad overlapping phenomena that we attribute to the same source because it's so strange and our minds really don't know how to place this in a category because we're dealing with something that seems to defy easy categorization. We don't even have a terminology for a lot of this stuff that we're dealing with. So we try very desperately to peg it into little convenient pigeonholes. But I like the idea that we could be dealing with an intelligence that's indigenous to our own planet. And I've called this intelligence crypto-terrestrial, simply for lack of a better term. And that term wasn't actually coined by me. It was coined by someone commenting on my blog about 3 years ago, I think. But it's one of those theories that sounds very shady and strange, and it kind of harkens back to the ideas of Richard Shaver and the Hollow Earth, like you mentioned. And obviously this is an established fact, but I think it's an option that warrants some sort of investigation. Could we be sharing the planet with an intelligent non-human species that we don't know about? And could UFOs be a manifestation of this species? And in the end,
they could have been here a long time, Mac.
Exactly, they could have been here as long as us, or perhaps quite longer.
What's the premise of After the Martian Apocalypse?
After the Martian Apocalypse is a speculative look at Martian enigmas and the case for taking a serious look at them. I don't pretend to know that they are artificial or aren't. But I think several of these formations we're looking at on the Martian surface that have been reimaged by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter look for all the world like potential archaeological sites. And I think if we saw a lot of these places on Earth, there would be no question. We would send geologists and archaeologists to check these out. But since they're on Mars, they're excluded from consciousness. They're just shoved aside and labeled as geological formations. And there's little true scientific follow-up. And I think that's a catastrophe. I think that we're dealing with something potentially quite revolutionary, and I'd like to see some furthered interest in this from the academic community, the anthropological community, even the artistic community. I think has something to bring something to bear on this, and it's just a fascinating subject in its own right, and the implications are, of course, extremely unsettling.
Let's definitely get back to that next hour, because that is a major story. And, of course, you echo a lot of what Richard C. Hoagland, Mac, has believed for, he's a number of years now. So we'll get into that. With the UFOs, let me tell you what's the area that is puzzling to me and bothers me the most. It doesn't seem like we get to the end. We don't seem to get to the finish line with them. We have great stories. We have, in some cases, incredible eyewitness testimony. We don't have a tremendous amount of physical evidence. At least the public doesn't. And what government has, who knows. But will we ever get these answers, Mac? That's the thing. Will we ever get these answers to what they are?
Yeah, I'm tempted to think that we're dealing with the phenomenon that deliberately masks itself and keeps one step ahead of us. It's rather like what Chris O'Brien talked about, the trickster element at work. And whatever this phenomenon may be, it does seem to behave like a trickster. It's something playing us along, like a carrot held before us, and we keep marching towards it like the proverbial mule. And so, yeah, whether we will ultimately be able to understand what the UFO phenomenon is an interesting question. Maybe we're not dealing with a thing in the traditional sense of the word thing. Maybe it's not a palpable puzzle with a resolution that we can comprehend. Maybe we're dealing with something so alien, so foreign to our nervous systems that we simply lack the perceptual acumen to ever understand it. You know, we could be dealing with something far beyond our current